Tommy Clark, head of social, Triple Whale. Um, 5-minute summary of your career and how you ended up at the Whale.
It's super roundabout, so I'll do my absolute best to keep this under 5 minutes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I
I
always
mean, you can
start
take a little
with
longer if you want, but like, don't leave out the good stuff.
okay. Well, it started with me going to college and thinking that I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. My dream job was to be the team doctor for the LA Lakers. If that was
Yeah.
my job, I was set.
Just
That was
operating
the
on
goal.
Kobe's knee. Did you grow up in LA?
Yeah, grew up in LA,
Nice.
Burbank specifically, but I just say LA.
Yeah.
So that was the goal at first. Was playing basketball at the same time as well at a small D3 school in Minnesota. Got super into health and fitness as I was a basketball player. Figuring out ways to make myself better. Through that, decided I wanted to switch my major from pre-med to nutrition. When that happened, I transferred schools, stopped playing basketball, and also started up a fitness coaching side hustle.
Yep.
And that's where I got into marketing. I started an Instagram page, had to get clients, so I just started putting out really bad content that sucked. Looking back at it, it was terrible.
So like, hold on. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You had to put out really bad content, or you just were putting out really bad content because you didn't know any better?
I didn't know any better. I just started an Instagram page.
So it wasn't like you knew that bad content worked and that's why you were putting it out.
No,
you were just putting out shitty content.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
That's a great starting point, by the way. That's like, like you talk to Daniel Murray, he's just like, you just need to start doing it.
Exactly.
Like you can't build the muscle unless you start using the muscle in general,
No, I feel like a lot of people overthink themselves out of creating content. What I think where I was lucky was I just was a little bit delusional and like didn't realize it was as bad as it was and just started posting. And eventually I just did it so much that it got better and better. Yeah. But yeah, you have to start somewhere. And most likely it's not gonna be
great. Right.
But
okay, moving right along.
Did that for like a year and a half, 2 years, got tired of the coaching side of it, just same conversation every week. But I really enjoyed the marketing side of it and figuring out how to get clients. So then I stopped coaching and stopped that side hustle, started working part-time for a company in the health and fitness space, doing content and marketing while I was still a student. Did that for another year or so. And then from there, one of my friends that I met in that space referred me to a freelance gig running social media for D2C Newsletter, which is their newsletter in the e-commerce D2C space. Yeah. Did that for a few months, and that's where my current CMO, Raba, found me, slid my DMs, was like, hey, looking for someone to run our social media. Are you looking for a job? Just so happened that I graduated school a month earlier, actually was looking for a job, so timing just worked out. We had a 15, 20-minute Zoom call.
Yeah, and this was like,
got that gig.
This was like earlier this year.
Yeah, this was January of this year. Right. I got that job in February and just been off the races since then. So
yeah,
actually, I think I did a pretty good job of condensing that.
That was pretty good. That might not even have been 5 minutes, actually. That might have been like 3.5.
Overachiever.
Yeah. So the e-com newsletter, was that like a Nick Sharma type deal? Like what is you have, if you search Tommy Clark, that organization, the collective that you and Daniel are part of, comes up. What is that?
What do you mean? Oh, Workweek?
Yeah. What is Workweek?
Okay. So yeah, so I write my own newsletter on social media strategy. By the way, subscribe to Social Files if you haven't already.
Yeah. Go to Social Files, subscribe. It's very valuable.
But that is one of the things I'm doing on the side. So I have my full-time job with Triple Whale, and I also write my newsletter. And that's pretty much just showing brands how to grow on social media, proper social media strategy, like how to grow on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, all that good stuff. Workweek acquired the newsletter, so I write for them now, and I pretty much get a retainer to write my newsletter, and they help me grow it through paid ads and run the operations. They run all the ad sales. So I pretty much just write and make good content, and they handle all the stuff that, one, I'm not the best at, and two, I just don't really want to spend a whole lot of time.
Yeah, so that's what Workweek is. It's like a stack of newsletters related to marketing or what. They're kind of doing the business ops, and they pay you money and let you just be the writer.
Exactly. And there's like rev shares. So they do the ad sales, they keep a percentage, I keep a percentage. So yeah, it works out.
Yeah. What was the e-com newsletter called? I'm just like trying to find different places to advertise.
D2C Newsletter was it was literally called D2C Newsletter.
Does it still exist?
Yeah. I think they just passed like 100,000 subs. So, or not just passed, but they're at like 100 something. 1,000
Can you hook
subs.
me
They're
up? Should I
doing pretty
advertise in
okay.
there if I'm going for the Shopify Plus crowd, or is it not?
I don't know.
Is
I
it
think
not
we
the
tried advertising with them with Triple Whale. I'm not sure how it went, but I think it's definitely worth exploring.
Yeah. Cool. So I found you because, and I've told you this, but I haven't told whoever's listening to this. I thought it was like so wild. Well, first I found out about Triple Whale through one of your investors that I was on a call with. Because if you're me, you get prospected all the time. You never answer any of them. But this fund Elephant, the guy Andy Hunt who started it, I'm like really good friends with his younger sister. He's a founder of Warby Parker, who's our biggest customer. And I'm just like, I've said hi to the guy before, like, but like never actually talked to him about like what I was doing. And it's like so close to like the pond that he plays in that I was just like, I'll do a call with you if Andy comes on. And then Andy mentioned that he's like, I'm not surprised. Like we were kind of seeing the type of growth you were doing it a totally different way. Like we're only sending out cold emails from the Philippines and the rest was inbound. And you guys were all on social media. And he's like, I'm not surprised that you're getting this type of adoption because in this ecosystem of e-com companies, like if something starts working, it's just there's such a network effect, not in a traditional way, but just like through the communication and how connected the people are.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, these Triple Whale guys like growing by 30,000 MRR a day. And they just have like some guy tweeting about it. And then I look at Triple Whale and the founders aren't doing it because I was always under the impression that you had to be Russell Brunson in order to like really kill it on social. And I'm like, I'm not willing to do that. And it was before I had a deep understanding of how you could have a social presence as, let's call it just like a meme account. Like you can, you know what I mean? As a person and not have it run your life. Cause like for instance, my buddy here, Daniel, like he's half Nicaraguan. He spends a lot of time in Nicaragua. He like met like, this girl, Nina Fashion. Oh wait, I don't have you on, so I'm looking at the camera. So he met this girl who's like the biggest fashion influencer in Nicaragua and like amazing girl, just like, you know, you have to have so much if you have millions of followers and an e-commerce brand on the back of it in Nicaragua. Like you're just you're playing in the NBA. Like something about you is like LeBron James, but like it has to be your entire life. You know, like every time we go on the boat, it's like there is a 20-minute photo shoot to capture that, you know, and like you go back inside and like there is a photo shoot to capture that. And like just marketing that lifestyle is what worked. It's what captivated people. It's what made people like buy, you know, these cool clothes that she like was like serving as like an e-com retailer for. And then if you don't really know how the machine works or whatever, you just look at that and you're like, there's no fucking way I'm going to do that to my life and my family or whatever. Like, like you don't see distance between like probably what Russell Brunson's doing and that, right? Like there's no way this dude is like letting it ruin his whole life, right? He's like got too many resources for that to happen. So anyway, I started trying to track people down that might allow me to speak to someone at Triple Whale. And this guy, Andrew Schultz, was like, you should like hit this guy Chase Diamond up. Like maybe you could just like hire Chase, you know, I don't know. Right. And then like, I talked to Chase and it like became very clear to me that like Chase is not on the market to be hired by a company. he's like way out of the
He's doing okay.
Yeah. He's like killing it so hard. But Chase is awesome. And like, that's like the word everybody uses to describe Chase. And very quickly, he sort of, you know, he started demystifying how I could like create our presence in social a little bit, but I still didn't really understand it. And then he hooked me up with like Max. And then I sort of like got in touch with Rabah, like this, that, and the other. And, you know, ultimately it led to like, I'm like, Rabah, you need to be doing what we're doing and I need to be doing what you're doing. So like, let me come into your office first and show you what we're doing and give you all the lists and all the email templates and everything else, because it's going to work because your brand's better than ours. And then you need to tell me what you're doing. And then I'm in your office and you're like, you kill it on LinkedIn. It's low hanging fruit. At the same time, I read this like Gerhardt founder brand book. If you're a founder, you should read it. It's it just articulates the case to build a brand as a person rather than a word. And then, yeah, we started talking about how I might strategically, do this LinkedIn crap. And like, you've been coaching me and I have like 4,000 more followers in like, I don't know, what is it, 10 weeks? Like, it's amazing.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I'm going to, and just typical me. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to like chill out and do that. Like, all of a sudden it went to like 2 LinkedIn posts a day, 2 newsletters a week. I just, at the beginning of this episode, which probably get chopped out, I've been recording podcasts for 4 weeks and I have 11 1-hour episodes that haven't been launched yet, but are like currently in production. And I'm doing a once a week work in public where I'm like, oh, I changed the sales deck last week. Here's what I did. And then reporting back on it like, oh, we sent out 12 contracts yesterday, 30K ACV. This is really awesome. And like, it feels like it's a little bit without direction right now, but like, I totally get this idea of the flywheel that you described to me. That ultimately, like, there's going to be so much that you can sort of throw out there, see what works, mix it all on like different platforms and everything. And I just feel like I get it, like I get it. And it's wild. So like, when did you have a moment where was there like when you were just making shitty content, for instance?
Yeah.
Was that because you were bored? You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm trying to like, the essence of what I'm saying is like, I have internalized the power of social media. When you started creating content, had you internalized it, or were you just like, this is what I need to do, for some reason you kind of thought this is what you needed to do, but you didn't know why, or like the power of it or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just looking around the space that I was in at the time, like the fitness space, a lot of fitness coaches, they all have Instagram. So like,
yeah,
well, if I want to be like that,
that's what I need to do. Yeah.
Probably do that. Kind of like how you're in a situation, you were in a situation where you're looking at these founders like, oh, they have personal brands. Like, I should probably do this.
Totally. I see how it would help me. Right.
Exactly.
With like my exact thing I'm trying to do.
I think that's kind of how it started. And then, yeah, just through trial and error, started to understand what worked. I binge watched way too much Gary Vee content.
Yeah.
Eventually figured it out. But yeah, I just started out of just kind of looking around what other successful people in the space that I was in were doing, and just thinking, why would I try to do something else? Let me just do what they're doing.
Just totally. Are there any personality traits that you think you have that make you uniquely suited to like be a head of social title? Like if basically what I'm getting at is like, if you're sitting here listening to this in college and you're like, should I have a career in social media? What do you think are there personality traits that would make someone more likely to succeed?
Yeah. I mean, outside of the basic personality traits that I think anyone in any field needs to succeed, like hardworking, all that stuff, I spend way too much time on the internet. So I'm doing this anyway. I enjoy it. I enjoy consuming this content and figuring out why it does well and learning from these other creators. So that was one indication. And also I feel like I have a good balance of art of it and kind of the subjective nature of it. Because a lot of good social media content is just based on pattern recognition and vibes, for lack of a better term.
Right.
You just kind of know what works. But also being able to tie that back to business goals. I think you look at a lot of social media managers right now, and just content creators in general, and they go to one end of the extreme or the other. They're either super artsy and just want to do it for the passion and for the fun, and there's no real tie back to business metrics, or you have other end of the spectrum, which you see this a lot in B2B and SaaS in particular, which is everything has to be tied to revenue today. Like how many links or how many clicks did this post drive? How many demos did this post drive?
Right.
And both have merit, but if you go too far in either extreme, you're going to end up hurting yourself. One being you never look at business metrics whatsoever. Well, like, what's the point of all this? And the other being, like you were saying a few seconds ago, you're doing all this stuff. You're not really exactly sure what it's doing business-wise, but you know it's working. a lot of people, when they start off with content, they expect it to turn into leads and demos right away. But I think what I've done really well is being able to bridge that and kind of land in the middle of where I enjoy the art of it and the subjective nature of figuring out how to do these creative posts and copywriting and all this stuff. But I also understand logically that it needs to tie back to business results. And I think the best social media managers and the ones that the most are the ones that are able to do that most.
Yeah, I hear you. And one thing that like really resonated with me that I feel like when you speak to somebody who's like not a marketer about great marketing, like I feel like if we had a conversation about Liquid Death, we would probably think similar things. Like most incredible brand I've seen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just interviewed the founder of Soylent, similar sort of brand name, right? Like just stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, that is incredible. Like the fact and Liquid Death is like 1 million people competing for like the purity of their water. And like, there's this can that says death in a can, you know, like so awesome. And like, I think what you said about trying to figure out why the content worked. Like if I'm sitting here trying to give advice to a young person about anything in business, try to figure out why that worked, you know, like
100%.
Whatever you just consumed, like try to reverse engineer how it got in front of you, you know? And like, because if you can do that, then you understand the system that got it there and you can like put your own production into that system, you know, which is like, dude, in this world, you're either a producer or a consumer. And if you're a consumer, you're dead. That's my view. You know what I mean? Like you do not have a chance unless you are a producer.
Yeah. Now it's interesting though. And to that point though, I think especially in social, I think you have to be enough of a consumer to know what's going on.
Totally.
Especially in this field. So I think that's where a lot of B2B content people kind of mess up a little bit, is they don't spend enough time consuming content. So they don't know what their audience is going to resonate with. And they end up just posting blogs that no one cares. And they're wondering, why are we not growing?
Yeah.
But generally 100% agree. It's like, you need to be way more on the production end of that spectrum.
And you are correct for, it's not either or, but like,
for sure.
The point is the orientation. So like, here's a good way to put it. And my wife and I, we like to try to like, you know, without succeeding, be like some type of responsible consumers, like sort of justify like this absurd, you know, and it's crazy right now, especially because it's you make 1,000 purchases when you have a child. We had a child 10 weeks ago, 1,000, right? Like purchase decisions. I mean, there's repeat purchases in that. So it's like, it's just crazy. But like, she's a ceramicist. And she's like, I want to try to like produce an equal amount between the, you know, PR work that I get done for my clients and art that I produce for my friends and sort of followers. I want to be producing more than I'm consuming in this world in general. And I think that's like a really cool idea, you know,
100%.
And if you sort of live that way, then you kind of can't be broken, you know, like if you sort of live that way and then like have a vague understanding of economics and like what different things are worth and why, then I think it's just like a really cool way to go through life. And then you can get to this point, which I feel like we're about to be in, where I have this incredible amount of leverage working for me, you know, like all of a sudden, and it has not been this way. Like I would say the last 8 weeks, my entire professional life has gone from me selling other people to it's flipped.
Yep.
Every potential employee I talk to is selling me on why they should start. Like every investor is begging me to get on the phone with them and pitching me, you know what I mean? It's like every partner is, you know, it's just the whole thing flipped. And all of a sudden it's like in this different, but that was like, you know, this podcast is called 10 years in the making. Literally 10 and a half years ago, I attempted to start my first company.
Yeah.
And 2 months ago, it finally has this like crazy. Anyway, slightly
I think
unrelated
on
to the
that note
conversation.
too, that's something when it comes to social and content that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you look at the numbers of the past 8 weeks, and like you were saying earlier, we've gone up by like 4,000 followers on LinkedIn almost overnight, and getting wild engagement on posts, and the podcast is crushing, investors selling you, all this stuff. That's hard to do if you don't have that 10 years of experience before.
Yeah.
If you just start
Yeah.
on LinkedIn thinking
Totally.
that you're going to blow up like that, because I think that's what a lot of people do, especially like newer founders. They think they're going to blow up to 5,000, 10,000, et cetera, number of followers, but they haven't done anything cool yet.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah,
like
it's
you've
like it
been
all
doing
works
this for 10
together
years.
totally in
Exactly.
like the current story and the name of our company and the like traction it's got and this and that
100%.
and the brands we have. It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, like maybe this guy, I think the whole thing is like, maybe this guy is worth listening to, you know? And
Exactly.
even just like the description of my name, like CEO at retention.com, like what? That's like pattern interrupt right there, you know? Anyway, really, really, interesting sort of thing to think about. And I'm just like I have another buddy who I worked out with twice a week at his house for the last 3 years, and like, you know, ups and downs and arounds and whatever else.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're the hot girl now. He's like, that's literally what, like, it's 8th grade.
I love it.
Like you showed up and like, you've got like boobs and hips and you got your braces off and like, cause I was telling him, I'm like, dude, like I can't, my calendar is nuts now. Like it's like people that I want to talk to that want to talk, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just this crazy thing to manage. But anyway, moving right along here. So would you say that you're like the best at any one platform, or does social not work that way? If you you know what I mean? Like,
I think generally I'm confident in any platform that I'm on, I'd be able to grow a following for a brand or a personal brand. I spend the most time on Twitter and LinkedIn because most of my work is in the B2B tech space, and just by nature of the audience that's on those platforms, it makes the most sense for the vast majority of brands in that space. Like with Triple Whale, we were on TikTok. I mean, we still are on TikTok, but we really were going hard on it for probably a month or two earlier this year. And we saw lots of success. We had a video hit over 3 million views. We had several hit over 1. And from the outside, it looked like, oh, we're killing it. Like, this is so sick. Did it turn into business-wise? Not really.
Yeah.
And maybe if we played that game long enough, it would have. But compared to the low-hanging fruit is Twitter, and it just didn't really make much sense. And I think that's where most tech companies are at right now. So I just spend a lot of time on Twitter and LinkedIn. I also enjoy writing a lot more than I enjoy creating video. I enjoy public speaking. I just enjoy the editing side of it and that whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I spend most of my time on Twitter and LinkedIn. I would say I'm best at those, but generally, like you said, the principles apply across platforms and even across other modalities of marketing. I think it all goes back to copywriting for the day. Like if you're good at copywriting, like you'll be pretty good at social.
Right. Yeah. Copywriting is so powerful, huh? It's like the video is such a rich medium because of like, whatever you want to call it, like the subconscious facial cues that you get and like all that shit. But like, man, there is nothing like clear and concise written word like that there never has been, right? Like it is the Declaration of the Independence is like still, you know, we're talking about the right to bear arms like 300 years later. I don't even know. So do you have any guiding philosophical principles about this whole area of study? For instance, Daniel Murray's interviewed him last week. His thing is like, he's got 2 things he said. He says, tries to keep things as simple as humanly possible. And then he also tries, for LinkedIn specifically, where he's grown his huge audience, he likes to give people a break. Right. Do you have anything like that? That's like, this is my thing that I'm doing, you know?
Yeah. I think for any brand, you have to look at why should someone follow you? If you can't answer that question very clearly, regardless of platform, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, even an email newsletter, like why should someone follow your content? If you can't clearly answer that with something that's relevant to your target audience, you're kind of dead from the start.
Yeah.
And then on that point, I think, especially now, kind of like how Daniel said, give people a break, do that entertaining content. You have to think about why people are on social. They're probably not going on social media to check up on what the latest B2B SaaS company is posting on the blog.
Right.
Maybe, but the vast majority of
Probably
people
not. Yes.
aren't going to be doing that. What are they going on there for? To catch up with their friends, to watch entertaining content. And if you make your content entertaining and catch their attention, and I think instead of trying to stand out so much, try to blend into what your audience is looking to experience on social.
Yeah.
So like blend into the entertaining content and the stuff they're going to be consuming anyway. I think that's what we've done really well with Triple Whale and the more like humorous content, especially on Twitter, like with memes and just kind of like funny stuff in general. It's more in alignment with what people are going on social to do versus trying to like shove this square peg into a round hole and hope it works.
Yeah. So I think it's like, know what people are there for and give them what they want.
Exactly.
So like one of the things, this LinkedIn stuff, right? Like when you're like, a lot of people don't consume enough, so they don't, like my favorite thing is like, I spent like an hour on this one post about the thing that happened when I was speaking at Blue Whale, when I'm interviewing the pretzels.com guy. And like I said, what I did, and it was like kind of like a humble brag, like, it had a lot of these elements. And I was like, this is so clever. It's going to do well. And like, no one gave a shit. And then like you retweeted one of Daniel's, like it said literally like, the purpose of marketing is to help sales. And it got 5,000 engagements.
Yeah.
I was just like,
crazy.
Okay, hands in the air. I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
I mean, to that point though, I think there's a balance between those types of posts.
Yeah.
So obviously the more simple stuff that is very wide appeal, it's going to have a better chance of going viral and really taking off like that.
Yeah.
But those posts that are more niche, that are going to appeal to a smaller group of people, but a more powerful group of people, I think are also very beneficial. So it's not all about chasing if it was about chasing the likes, we just post those tweet screenshots every single post constantly and just run the numbers up. But at the end of the day, it's a business too. And we need to make sure that people trust you as a person enough to buy from you. So that's where that longer form content comes into play. But yeah, as a social media manager, I can confirm that a lot of the times the posts that do the best engagement wise and likes and shares, almost always the ones that take 30 seconds to post that you think this is stupid. And then just goes to them.
Unbelievable. So kind of on that note, kind of unrelated. So I've heard you say it several times. You said, there are a couple of things I know resonate deeply with my audience, so I talk about them in different ways all the time. So what are those things, and how long did it take you to realize that those were the things?
Yeah, it's a great question.
I can guess, by the way, because I like watch your stuff. I feel like I know what they are now.
Yeah. So when it comes to my personal brand, for anyone who doesn't know, like I said, I read a newsletter about social media strategy. My main audience is going to be social media managers.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's fairly easy for me to understand what those points are because I am a social media manager.
Right.
So
it's happening.
There wasn't much of a learning curve there.
Right.
But I would say one of them is definitely being a one-person social team, having to manage a bunch of different platforms at once, very little resources, burnt out. That's one pain point that I harp on a lot. Look at my LinkedIn. There's this one post that I post probably every 2 or 3 weeks. Every single time, it absolutely crushes.
Right.
It's the whole idea of a social media manager isn't a graphic designer. They're not a video editor, they're a TikTok creator. So hire a coordinator.
Right.
One thing that I realized, and this is true regardless of profession, so just think about this in terms of whatever target audience you're creating for. People love to be put in a position where they can vent without taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So they're not going to post that stuff on their LinkedIn because they're afraid that their
boss is going to see it.
Or someone that they're going to get hired by is going to see that and not want to hire them. So if you can post it without the downside and they can like it or share it,
right,
they still get to take part in that venting without having to take responsibility for it. So I mean, that's one example. There's another example of like platform updates happening super frequently. like just being overwhelming. But yeah, generally anything harping on being overworked, kind of work-life balance stuff, being burnt out, people not understanding social media managers, which are all very valid things.
Right.
But it is kind of funny how like you spot those patterns of what does well. And at the end of the day, like you're trying to grow an audience, I'm trying to grow an audience. So like we'd be stupid not to lean into those things.
Totally.
In ways that make sense. But yeah, it is pretty funny.
Another one that I see is like the one that's like, so like whose boss like wants to see social media booking demos on day one or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Right? Like what is this gonna fucking, it's like, I'm sure every social media manager is like, can you please, like heard, it's like in one way or another, they've heard like, so what is this doing? Right. And you're like, motherfucker, like you hired me and told me that I had like, rope to hang myself with. And now you're taking it away. Like, dude,
No, 100%.
Yes. Okay. So turning to, if you were a founder of an e-com brand with real traction, which both of our brand audiences, I mean, my personal brand audience and then Triple Whale's audience are that, right? So presumably those will be the people who, watch this because it's mostly them that I'm interviewing. What are your thoughts on building a personal brand versus building the business brand following?
Yeah, I think both are necessary. So personal brand definitely helps for obvious reasons. People, because going back to what we were talking about earlier, like why are people on social media? They're there to engage with people. I work in social media and I don't remember the last time I've engaged with a brand account from my personal account. I just don't go on social media to do that.
Right.
And if I'm not doing that, and that's my job, someone who's just randomly scrolling with little to no thought is probably not going to do that either, or not really incentivized to do it. So in a lot of cases, especially if you're a brand that doesn't already have a lot of recognition, so if you're not like a McDonald's or a Pepsi or a Wendy's or whatever, any big name brand that anyone would already know, you're going to have a really hard time growing a real brand social media presence from scratch out an influencer network without an active founder, or not even a founder, without an active team, just in general. It's very hard to do. So if I were starting from scratch, if you have a great product and you just want to get out there on social, I would grow the founder's account on LinkedIn. You could go Twitter as well. I think Twitter is very valuable still to this day, but I think LinkedIn is easier to get momentum from scratch. Right. Just because it's still very early on the platform. There's still a demand for content creators over there. So if you can post quality stuff, you're going to have a better chance of really growing quickly. So I would grow on LinkedIn, grow the personal brand, still make the company page and set it up, make sure everything's all good. Because what you can do is after like every post from the founder's account, just comment from the company page underneath, this is what we're doing.
And people click it.
Your stuff. And if the founder's content's good, people are going to get curious about what's retention.com. What do they do? And they go click over to the company page. It just kind of grows by osmosis. And then eventually, once you get to a certain point, I don't know what exactly this number would be, but let's say like 50,000, 100,000 followers. And you have this super strong personal brand on LinkedIn, then consider putting more effort into native content for the company page. But you can get a lot of the way there just through having a strong personal brand. And assuming it's the founder's brand, you're not really at risk for, like, the founder's not going to leave in most cases. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule, but it's not the same as a mid-level employee having a personal brand, which is still a valuable asset, but there is that risk of what if they leave, then you're kind of screwed. But growing the founder's personal brand is pretty foolproof. And then from there, transitioning that into then growing the company page with dedicated content.
Which brings us to Triple Whale, who's not doing that. What are your thoughts there?
I'm trying to get Raba, our CMO, on LinkedIn. This is a big initiative of mine. So hopefully that will happen in the next month or two. I think that was more so by necessity of like, this is the hand I'm dealt. What do I do with it? So it's still very possible. And if you're in a situation, so if you're a marketer watching this or listening to this and you're like, my founder doesn't want to do this or my CMO doesn't want to do this, you can still grow a company. It's still very doable.
Yeah, like
It
you
just
guys
takes
have
a bit more.
20,000. You guys have 20,000 followers right now. But what I would say, my observation on Triple Whale is like, it's such a fun brand that it's
Mhm.
almost like following a person or something. You know, it's
You read my
like
mind.
not.
That's my thought process. That's
Yeah, it's
literally
like
my entire approach is I treat it like a personal, especially kind of on LinkedIn, but especially on Twitter. And this helps because I'm also active on social, so people know that I'm the one behind it.
yeah,
So it makes it a bit easier to build that connection.
right.
But if you look at a lot of other SaaS companies in ecom right now that are trying to essentially run the Triple Whale playbook on Twitter, doesn't quite hit the same because no one know like there's just not that connection. But yeah, I treat it like a personal account. That's like my thesis behind both. It
Yeah.
works well.
And it is working. So I heard this for the first time after I met you, that there were like awareness platforms and then there's your trust platforms. And you need to like use the awareness platforms to like capture people and bring them into your trust platforms. Your trust platforms where like more depth or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So the question is that I have written down here is, are there certain things that you need to be doing in order to make other things worthwhile, right? Is the LinkedIn effort useless unless you have a newsletter or not, you know?
Yeah, I don't think LinkedIn is useless. I don't think social is useless if you don't have a newsletter. I think it's worth, even if you don't have a written newsletter, just having somewhere where you can capture traffic or just
Right.
use retention to capture your web traffic.
There you go.
Subtle plug. I got you. Sponsored.
Yeah.
But
Plug, baby.
but have some way to capture traffic if you are growing an audience. I think early on, it probably makes the most sense for brands and founders to just focus strictly on social. And then once they get to a point where there is traction and there is clear demand for a newsletter or for a podcast, to then start that. Because what'll happen if you do too much too early, I think there are exceptions. Like I think for you just kind of did everything and we're crushing.
But by the way, like I have money to spend on it too.
Exactly.
You know, I have like a wildly cash flow positive company, and like I didn't care. Like for instance, like this podcast.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. I was like, because Rob was like, dude, start a podcast yesterday. Just that'd be the first thing I do. And then you talk to somebody else like, no, man, like, do this. I'm like, I'm trying to think about how I would actually process what is necessary to go into a podcast from a production standpoint. And I was like, there is no way I'm doing that with everything else I got. And then I was talking to this guy, Brad Weinmart, who's got a podcast, and he's like, these guys will do it all for you and they're incredible. So like they go through, they edit it all, they clip it up into video snippets that have quotes that go by. I'm like, they'll literally just like feed you everything to post on social media at some point, right? It's kind of like, if you don't have someone doing that, it's not worth doing the podcast in the first place, because if I didn't have those guys, all these recordings would just be sitting in Riverside and they never see the light of day, you know?
100%.
Like,
yeah, there definitely is a rank prioritization that you should go through, especially if you're resource strapped.
Yeah.
If you have a wildly cash flow positive business, then cool, do everything. Like, absolutely.
So, yeah,
like,
exactly. It's just make sure you have the right people doing it, but like do it all. Like, you know, my thing was like, I just need my life, as crazy as it's getting right now, I need to only spend like 2 or 3 hours a week on this, and it needs to be Monday morning. So, well, aside from these podcast recordings, which I've allowed every other week, like 4 people to sort of book on Thursdays. That's kind of like how I've done it, which is, it feels busy sometimes, but like it's very manageable. That's not a lot for the amount of production that's getting posted right now. I think anybody would be like, that's probably worth the 2.5 hours, you know? Cause like the way we're sort of working together, it's like, it's still my words, you know, it's still like, I'm doing a lot of video, which gets, you know, like Mason will like watch the video and then make it into a newsletter, you know, or whatever, like kind of doing the same thing with LinkedIn. So, but like, I if I was just doing this myself, like it would be all that I was doing. And I would just
do LinkedIn. I think I would
still
probably the lowest hanging fruit.
Totally. And even like Chase was like, Chase is full-time social media now, basically, right? He's kind of like, I would say he's an advisor at his own agency, but he's like the top
Yeah.
of funnel for it through social media. But like, he's like, I do 3 posts a day on both platforms, and you know, they're thoughtful, right? Like, it takes a lot of time. Oh, and another thing that when you were saying like people need a reason to follow you, what popped into my head was like what Chase, this is so boss. It's like, follow me if you want to become a better writer. That is such a boss thing to say, you know? Like, I just like some of his posts are so, I mean, that's just the example of copywriting, right? Like, that's so elegant, you know, like I'm not going to make a political comment here, but like in the same way that if you were to objectively look at the words Black Lives Matter standing there, that is an impossible phrase to go against from a mental standpoint, right? Like you have to be behind those 3 words.
Yeah.
There's no, you can't, of course, Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, Green Lives Matter, like, but you know what I mean? It's like, follow me if you want to become a better writer is like a statement like this. Like, of course I want, you know, who there's not a person alive that would not want to become a better writer. So it's like, it's just this amazing hook, you know? So what advice would you give explicitly to someone in college who wants to start a career in social?
Start a side project and use it as your initial portfolio. Parlay that into freelance gigs or a job, whatever route you want to go. If you want to do in-house, if you do freelance, whatever that looks like. But I would start with some sort of side project. For me, that was like my fitness side hustle. And that's where I got a lot of experience. And then I was able to parlay that into a part-time job, build more relationships, and everything just kind of snowballed from there. But if I was starting from scratch, I wouldn't wait on like getting a marketing degree and going like that whole route, getting an internship. You can do all that stuff, but I think you can really expedite the process just by doing a lot of trial and error through your own side project.
Like, I talk to a lot of people that hire people who are out of college.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that matters more than anything else. How many followers does this person have and how engaged, right? Like the ultimate, like they brag about these people that they have in terms of their personal, it's like, my TikTok girl's got 4 million TikTok followers, right? Like, it's like, that's what the bar is now, right? Like,
yeah, it's interesting because I think there is validity to that, but also, I mean, obviously there are killer social media managers that don't have any sort of personal brand. But I think generally, if you're trying to get yourself in the door, having your own personal brand, it helps. Not only because of the followers, but you're posting your thoughts on Twitter or on LinkedIn or on TikTok, and you're giving people insight as to how you think about marketing. Like for me, after I did the fitness thing, I did a little bit of YouTube stuff and was also posting on Twitter about like marketing and social media strategy. And that's just literally, if someone wants to learn how I think on social media, they can either read my content, watch my YouTube video, and they have 95% what they would need to know about me as a candidate. And that's why I put myself in a position where I don't really have to look for a job. If I was ever looking for a job, I could just post on Twitter, hey, open to work. And I'd probably have something in like the next week.
Right.
Like, that's not an accident.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the same thing. So like we've talked about this a bunch. Like my 2 content lines are I'm trying to build an audience of ecom people who either are founders with traction or care about email. And I have a separate content line that's all about recruiting. And like all about recruiting, I have like 3 things going on. 1, I made 11 episodes that I call the Join Our Team podcast.
Yeah.
Everything about what this crazy traction we have, my philosophies behind, you know, how we sell things, how absurdly valuable I want them to be, remote work, like all this crap that like you would never find out in an interview process. There would be absolutely no way before you got here that like you would find out that this company was philosophically aligned that way. It's an hour of me just ranting, right? And I think that really helps. Like every single person that we've hired has watched all of those. And it's kind of like, you know, they send them back the first one Literally, it's just like Adam made this 5-minute video, and then it's an 11 video playlist. And like, if it doesn't excite them, it's not the right fit. If it does excite them, then they just got like indoctrinated, you know?
Exactly.
So it's like this amazing sort of vehicle, like inbound sale, you know, it's like the HubSpot inbound marketing model, but like kind of for a career. And I'm trying to do the same thing with the work in public. It's like giving people like a reality show that they can like sort of tune into and slow roll themselves into wanting to be a part of it. It's like, if I just keep showing insane growth to people in these crazy things that I'm trying to do versus every other market participant, it's so audacious that like it will slowly just like build this movement around it. That's what I think.
100%.
I mean, it's not original. Like, I'm not the first person to do it, but like,
Doesn't have to be.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it works, you know, which is why. Rock and roll, man. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I do 2 things to wrap everything up. If you could write one thing on a billboard for everyone to see, what would it be?
Don't make boring content.
Yes. The billboard might be boring, but don't listen to this.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool. Final 5, favorite book.
Favorite book. I was going to steal yours and say $100 million offer.
Dude, it's so good. I hate the fact that I've written so much about it, but I'm just doing so much right now specifically. Like, I've totally changed how we sell everything after reading that book to both of the audiences that we have. And it's working. So, like, dude, we have 2 trained reps right now. We just hired 15 more. We sent out 12 $30,000 average ACV contracts in the last 24 hours with 2 reps. I don't want to say it's all because of Alex Hormozi, but like, it's because I listened to that and I'm like, this just isn't good enough. It's like, our traction's fine, but like, I could do this in a way to where they would look at the pricing and they would be like, I would be a fool to not jump on this right this second, you know? So it's like, we're doing much larger, it's like the size of the buyer has been gradually, it's just our brand's increasing. We know who the audience is, this plus guy or whatever. So it's like, we're kind of creeping up market, but like at the same time, it's like, we would have made more monthly money from these guys with this other deal, but like it turned into this thing that's less dollars per month, but like a for sure 14-month thing, like that closes quicker because it's more obvious. You know what I mean? It's like, there's not a question of like, well, what's the price per lead? And like, is this going to work? And do I need to upgrade, downgrade? It's like, oh man, I'll do the scale plan. Like, when's the onboarding call? Like, you know, it's just wild. Like,
for sure.
And it's crazy that books can do that. You know, like you can just get influenced by this person. And it's like, dude, like, I never thought about it like that, but like, why wouldn't I do that? Like, I'm in a position to where I could make an offer that would be an absolute killer to these people. And I'm not doing it right now. Why not? You know, like, can I afford to do it? Yeah. Our gross margins are like 95%. Like, I can, you know what I mean? Like, it's software, you're selling air. Like, you can, but a lot of times it's not even raising prices. It's just like changing the perceived value and reducing the risk and improving time to value and like all that crap that he talks about, which is so fantastic. Anyway, sorry. Particularly passionate about that one right now.
I love it.
Yeah. Married, single, kids?
Single.
You single ladies.
23 single. Yeah.
23 and single, 6'6". Where do you live?
Austin, just like
Austin, Texas. Yeah. And then favorite vacation you've ever been on?
And I was just in Barcelona for a month earlier this year. I think that probably takes it. I don't know. It technically wasn't a vacation because I was working remote, but
I studied abroad in Barcelona. It was great. You know, this whole remote work thing, like in this video that I made about remote work. So like, I'm like, I don't want to hire people in Austin. Cause like I have this great situation. The Jasper guys, I'm friends. I'm really tight with Distal and Dave, and I talk to them every day, but like, they're not coming by my office to like interrupt me and like talk about work, you know, which is like so incredible for productivity. and so I want to stay remote forever because I love this dynamic. But like, I don't want our people to be like backpacking and trying to work, but like going to Barcelona for a month and having a place with internet where you like, that is such an enriching experience to your life that like, I definitely want people to do that as much as possible. I spent I dreamed of being like a lifty ski bum, and I was working on Wall Street, could never do it. Finally, my life got to the point where I had a remote company, enough money. I did 5 years in a row in the winter in Aspen, and I rented this little condo next to the gondola. I skied 300 days. Like I had this great schedule, work from like 6 to 9, ski from 9 to 12, you know, eat lunch from 12 to 12:30, work from 12:30 to 5, go out to a restaurant, do the whole thing over, ski all weekend. Friends would come in town. I had an extra bedroom, like incredible. Like we are living in a fantastic time that like you can do that. Airbnbs are set up to accommodate for all this. It's like, it's awesome. I mean, the downside is like people argue, I think really, I listened to this great podcast, which was like the scientific, there's so much data that the big companies put out during COVID about relative productivity. So they're like, office environment is actually horrible for some like engineers, open floor plan is like so much more code got written during COVID than during the open plan era.
Yeah.
The spontaneous encounter is actually not that valuable. What is valuable to be in the same room is like deep creative work, proven. Any sort of complex document that you're working through with two sides, much better to be in person than like doing this whole like chain of whatever. Because the contingent, it's just like somebody takes too long and then that screws everyone else's schedule up. It's like, but the problem is everyone is feeling less fulfilled socially. But the dude's point is like, why is it the employer's responsibility to cultivate your social life? Right. Exactly. So like, you know, we got to figure out. Yeah, exactly. But like the people who will thrive in this next era are the people who cultivate their own social life and do all the other stuff like you're doing, you know, go to Barcelona, like go live in Aspen for 5 years, whatever. Anyway, fascinating conversation, dude. You live in a different world than I do. And it's just like so fun to like, you know, get into like people's heads who are just doing something totally different. I mean, not totally different, but like, you know, I'm just like, what I'm doing right now, I don't even know what it is, but it's like not only that. Anyway, great talk.
Thanks, Adam.